Well, Sitaram, and a pleasant good morning to all of our viewers and listeners, and welcome to an edition of the program Addiction and Recovery. I'm your moderator this morning, Jason Kalu. Join me as we welcome the host of the program Addiction and Recovery, Mr. Ramres Dwarka. Sitaram, Jason.
Hello, I'm Jason. It's indeed a privilege and a pleasure to be here again this morning. I want to join with you in welcoming all our listeners, both here in Trinidad and Tobago and worldwide on the various social platforms as well. This program is also recorded on YouTube and on Facebook, and it's also streaming live and will be repeated again tonight at 10 o'clock for those of you who do not have the time right now. You can tune in back to the same television station, radio station, and you can hear the program in its entirety. And of course, my number is posted at the bottom of the screen, your screen. You can call me if you have questions. Uh, Again, today is a very beautiful day out there. Jason, the sun is out in spite of the weather forecasts and all of that, the rains we've been having lately. And it's getting very near to Diwali as well. So I know there's a lot of activity in the air. But today, I want to express my admiration and my deepest respect for the wives of alcoholics. You know, for people who don't know, these women really are heroes in a way to have stuck it out with an alcoholic husband, and vice versa. There are men as well who have wives that are alcoholics, and because of their love for their wife and their family life, they have stuck it out. So my greatest admiration goes out to them. However, it is not easy living with an active alcoholic. A lot of things happen, Jason, when a person is either partner, and usually in our context here, usually it's the man who is the alcoholic. And in our culture, the man is expected to be the head of the household. You know, religious uh, teachings indicate that he is supposed to be one of the important decision makers, especially in the Indian families. You know, the husband is supposed to be the head of the household. He's supposed to be an exemplar. He's supposed to also ensure the family, you know, the children, they stay on the straight and narrow path in terms of discipline and all of that. I know mothers do a lot of socializing. That's their responsibility because they logically spend a lot more time with the children, especially if they are not employed. But the father is still seen as the ultimate, you know, like the appeal court in the legal system where he gives the final decision, and he also a lot of times um, apportions the consequences for the children's behavior as well. However, all of that becomes disturbed, becomes impaired when either party, if the husband is drinking, let me say this at the outset, wives are still able to hold the house together. And we have had many, many examples of that. You know, she, even in the middle of his drinking, even before he even thinks of doing something about it, she's holding things together. At first, she's just the Minister of Home Affairs, you know, he's there, the head of the household. But gradually, as his drinking progresses, Jason, she has to take on additional portfolios. She then becomes the Minister of Education. She's taking the children to school. She's going to the PTA meetings. She is going to meet the teachers when there's a problem. She's sitting doing their assignments with them. She's looking after their books and all of it, their uniforms and everything, procuring everything for that. Because he's busy. He don't have time. He basically, in the early stages of his drinking, he just goes to work, comes home, and he may assist. But as the drinking progresses, then he's not coming home after work. So he has no time to spend with the children or the family. And she has to pick up that additional responsibility. And then she's also the Minister of Health because Even when he gets sick, she has to take him to the doctor, take him, patch him up so he could go back to work, make sure he gets his fish broth when he's hungover from the day before, and all of that. And she even has to call and make excuses. Sometimes she has to lie just so that he could keep his job. If she has to call in that he's sick or he has to go to somebody's funeral. And sometimes, I've seen that happen, being a person in, and having people in my employ. The alcoholic forgot who's the person he reported as being dead the last time, and he's killing the same person more than once. And so the wife has to take on additional responsibility. Minister of Finance, Minister of Health, Minister of Education, as you know, and she has to fix the window that is broken. She has to get the yard cut. Eventually, she has to take all these responsibilities. And of course, in addition to having to be a good wife to him, so that that in itself causes pathology within the family. Now, I want to come back to the wife. And on top of that, you have the husband now who is not bringing the money home, drinking it out to the extent where, in addition to all that I spoke of before, Jason, see, she will have to, sometime out of necessity now, go out and find something to do to supplement the household income, to pay the bills, because she's at home when these people show up. When the TNTech van pull up to cut off your electricity, she's the one usually have to rush out there and beg them and try to borrow the money from a neighbor and rush down to the office and pay it, you know. And she has to deal with if Wasa threatens to cut the water supply. And she gets the insult when she has to go back to the shop to ask for, things on trust, you know, so that the whole family, a lot of people who have not lived these situations sometimes are not able to relate to what I'm saying this morning. But I'm sure all our sisters and the daughters who are living out there, who are living with an active alcoholic, will relate to what I'm saying. Now, as if that is not sufficient, there is physical abuse, there's emotional abuse, you know, and if she decides to speak to him, he's going to switch that back on her and say, that is why I go and drink. And not only him, his family as well, his mother, if she's living with her in-laws, they'll say, you see, the same thing. This boy was a good boy until he get married to you. They blame the wife as though she caused him to drink or she is perpetuating his drink. And they will tell her that because you nag him, all the time. That's why he don't want to come home and he goes and drink. It's so, you know, painful when you really get into these stories. I have had an experience, at one time I used to be a social welfare officer, Jason, and I was working in the Timital district in Trinidad. It was a Friday, and I went to visit this family who were getting public assistance because the husband had suffered an accident. And he had an accident because of drinking. He got in an accident. And now, because he was certified disabled from earning, the family was getting public assistance. And their case had come up for review. So I had to go and review the case and see whether they should continue to get. And so when I visited the family, they're living in a very small little hut, basically. The place is unkempt and sometimes you could look at a house and know that an alcoholic is living there. So when I went, this lady was busily packing things into a plastic bag, as though you're packing to leave. And I asked her, said, are you all going somewhere? She said, she took a heavy sigh and she exclaimed, Mister, every Friday I just have to go through this. I just have to do this. I say, what? And she explained to me. She said, he already gone to the junction and he's drinking. And I know when he come home, what is going to happen. And she describes situations where if he come and knock on the door more than 3 times and she didn't reach there to open it automatically, she would be in big trouble because he will accuse her of having somebody in the house. So she can't go to sleep. She has to wait up until he comes. And no matter what, even if she opens the door, he will find some reason to make an argument. You know, he would be the best person in the shop, but when he come home, some argument would start. And this lady had a little son of school age. He might have been about 6 or 7, and she had a little daughter about 3 or 4. And she pointed to the little boy. He had on 2 short pants and 2 shirts. I found that strange. And he said that was his running clothes. Because what she was doing, to summarize, she would pack the little girl's clothes in plastic bag, extra clothes, whatever supplies, and she would put it in a plastic bag and throw it at the back of the house. So that when she runs out the back door, she will just grab that bag. That is her bag with all her essential things, because she don't know how long she'll have to stay out before she could come back to the house. Then she has to decide during the day which house to run to, because two neighbors said, don't come back to their house, because the last time she went there for rescue, he stole the people's house. So she can't tell somebody she will come there because they'll tell her up front, don't come here. You know, they'll lock the gates. She would have to run and hide in the bush with her 2 children, sometimes spend the whole night there. Sometime when he catches her in the house, a fight will start, and her little son, 7, 6, 8, 6 going on 7, he's in the middle trying to protect his mother. Imagine. And the little girl is in a corner wetting down herself out of fear. Now, when children grow up in a milieu like that, with those experiences, later on, psychologists and sociologists, they have found that these things have a profound effect on the children. In fact, there are several books that have been written about this. It's called The Adult Children of Alcoholics, ACOA, which generally indicate that these children will become very efficient, workers and managers and all of that, but emotionally they are stunted. Generally, they're afraid to get married. And unfortunately, these girls who grow up in these situations, I don't know, maybe we need to do a research. Somehow they get married to alcoholics in turn, as though, they fit in with an alcoholic lifestyle as a jigsaw puzzle. So that this is why I'm saying today, it is really, really the women who stick with their husbands in spite of all of this. There would have been so many times of occasions of estrangement, and you will wonder, even the family and the neighbors will wonder, why you keep going back to a man like him. But it is because of genuine love, because the person they got married, when he was not drinking, they recognized he's such a beautiful person. And when he's not drinking, he could be the ideal father. And they are confused. In fact, they become a lot of alcoholic wives become neurotic, Jason. A lot of times before your husband even think he has a problem, these wives end up in psychiatric care and in the asylum sometimes, because of the fear of having to live in that situation. Can you imagine, he's supposed to come home at 4 o'clock, it's 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and it's Friday. Well, she knows she don't know what time he will come. And then sometimes a car pull up, you don't know if it is him or if it is the police. You understand? Because he got into an accident, he ended up in the hospital, and that's how he's on public assistance. You understand? This happens, I'm just citing that one case. But this happens so often in so many ways. You understand? And sometimes the wives have no choice but to end up going to the police because he physically beat them, and there's domestic violence. And I want to say at this juncture to all our daughters and sisters listening out there, if you're living with an alcoholic, you there's a very little difference between an alcoholic, a drunk man, and a madman. A drunk man is mad. It's a temporary condition where he might, when he's sober up, he will recover. But both of them will make decisions that could be way out wrong. So that wives and families who living with an alcoholic, they need sometimes, just like when we were in primary school, Jason, and we got punished for not doing the assignment. And at that time, we didn't like the teacher. We thought he didn't like us or something. But the teacher knew that he had to use a method that would get our attention. So too with the practicing alcoholic. So that I am saying to all our listeners out there, please do not stay and take emotional or physical abuse from an alcoholic. When you do that, when you clean the floor after he vomit, when you call and make the excuses for him on the job, what and parents do that as well. When the wife can't take it no more and she leave, they will take the pundit and go and beg her to come back with him. When we're doing all of those things, we are enabling the person to continue to drink because we are not allowing them to suffer the consequences of their behavior. Now, I am saying that all those situations could be used to help the alcoholic. Because when the wife goes to the police, right, the police now has the power, the authority, and they have the manpower as well. They have the strength. Physically fit people. They can come and arrest him and take him to the station and put him before the court the next day. And and a lot of times, once she informs the court that he was drunk, and his lawyers will tell the court to, sir, I'm sorry, my client was under the influence and he regrets it, he's sorry. Right. But at that point, the magistrate can suspend his sentence and say, look, you go to AA meetings or you go for treatment and come back here in 2 weeks or a month with accreditation that you have been going to meetings and you are staying sober. And I have seen so many people have their lives saved, alcoholics. As I speak to you right now, there are so many people who are now coming to AA meetings, staying sober, staying stopped because they were caught driving under the influence. And we have the breathalyzer now, taken to court, and the court ordered that they had to go to Alcoholics Anonymous and bring proof that they did, and then they will consider that in mitigation. So that this is an opportunity. I know a lot of wives would, because of their loyalty to their husband, and they will not want to go to the police because the husband is very unforgiving. You bring police for me, and even the mother-in-laws and in-laws and so on. But they have to understand that, look, this is a last resort. This is an effective method of getting the person to get help, because by then the mother would have spoken to them and say, look, if you don't stop drinking, I'll stop talking to you. That never caused any alcoholic. In fact, they celebrated the fact that the parents were not nagging them anymore. The wife will also suggest the same thing, that I will leave you if you don't stop drinking. And he will not respond to that. One of the things alcoholics respond to is when the employer say, you go and do something about your drinking, otherwise I will cut your lifeline here, you'll lose your job. Or when the magistrates say, you go and do something about your drinking, otherwise you're going to be imprisoned, or you're not going to get your driver's license again. These are effective ways and they should be used. And that's one of the main reasons I'm discussing this morning to all of our sisters and daughters out there who are living in situations like this. You let him know when he's sober that, look, the next time you behave like this, if you don't go and do something about your drinking, I will have no choice but to go to the police. You understand? Now, I know the police are also very reluctant to even pursue these matters because the wives come, report to the police. When the police investigate and bring the case against the man, the wives don't want to go and give evidence because now they and the husband make up. But wives and who need to follow through with it. You understand? So that effectively the person can be referred to go and get help. Now, remember earlier I was saying there's something called a co-alcoholic syndrome. That's my own terminology, Jason, where remember the wife becomes the minister of all departments. And now that gives her a certain kind of power, And we know from experience, even with politicians and all of that, people will give up a lot of things, but they don't want to give up power. Because now she has control, the children is in her corner, and she has control over the life. He is just a spoiled brat, and this leads to a certain amount of scapegoating, where the person who is the alcoholic, whether they be the husband or the wife, they become the clown or the scapegoat in the family. And this is important going forward. In the event that he seeks treatment, he goes for treatment, in-house treatment, or he's going to AA, it is important for the wives and the family members to understand that, look, he's not a bad person. He's a sick person. Alcoholism is recognized as a disease now worldwide and included in Trinidad. You don't get fired for being an alcoholic. You get fired if you don't go and do something about it and you cause harm to yourself or other people on the job, or you are truant on the job. You get fired for that. But now a lot of companies, even the government uh, departments, are sending people for treatment for their alcoholism where it is identified. So that it is important that when the person has stopped, it is important that the family members understand the nature of alcoholism. One of the important things is the wives or husband of the alcoholic need to educate themselves about the nature of alcoholism so they will understand that, look, this person is not bad because they will have seen the good side of them. It's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, when he's so drunk and sober. And that's why they keep staying because they can't understand. They're confused. How come he could be so nice when he's sober? He's the best father of the children. He's the best husband. He's so kind. He's helpful. But when he's drunk, there's a complete transformation. He becomes into a monster. This is why it is important that the spouses, the relatives, the siblings, even the parents, there is another fellowship that developed alongside Alcoholics Anonymous. First you had Alcoholics Anonymous for the alcoholic, the person who was actually drinking. But now you have what is called Al-Anon for the wives or spouses of the alcoholic, whether it be male or female. And there's also Alateen for the young children of the alcoholics. And you would be surprised, but there's also Alatot. I know we had a group in Felicity, the Felicity Serenity AA group, that had the AA meeting for the alcoholics. But in the same building, you had Al-Anon meeting for the wives of the alcoholics. But for the wives to come, they had to bring the children along. And so there was another classroom that was being used for the Alateen meeting, the teenagers in the family. And there was also another room that was for the little tots, the under 5-year-old, the children, because as we said, as I mentioned earlier on, this is a family illness. And if the husband and wife are both going to the meetings, what they did with the little tots, someone from the Al-Anon meeting will go sit with them, give them blank pages and crayon, and basically babysat them for the period so that the older siblings and the mother could be able and the father could be able to attend their meetings. That was the reason for the Alatot. And they will understand by association that my parents were going to these meetings. Later on, they will have no difficulty. They will develop an understanding of what these meetings are about. You understand? And it is a real joy to see the happiness that is reintroduced in a family like that, where all the family members are in recovery. Now, a lot of wives, and let me say this, a lot of wives will tell you that, look, I have no problem. I was not the problem. It was him. If he would just stop drinking, because when he's not drinking, he's such a beautiful person that if he would stop drinking, everything would be all right. They don't think anything is wrong with them. But the wives do not understand how their relationship, how the family dynamics have changed because of the husband's drinking. How he has been relegated. It's called in group work sociometric positions, where in every group you have certain positions. When one position is the leader, the other is those people challenging the leadership. And then there are those people who are what they call gatekeepers, and they are peacemakers, and they are all those roles in a group. You understand? And then there's the clown and the scapegoat. And where in the beginning he was the leader, he has been relegated to the position of scapegoat now. Everybody blame him. Anything wrong is he. We didn't go for holidays because of him. The house and the this, and we didn't get a new car because of him. So that a lot of people now, rather than focus on themselves, where they are contributing in a way to the problem, they scapegoat him. Now, he put down the glass, he starts staying sober, and all of a sudden he wants to take back control. He wants to take back the decision making. He wants to handle the money and all of that. And so many times when he promised before that he's going to stop drinking, and she gave him back the money, you know what he did with it? He blew it out. So she don't trust him anymore. One of the first casualty of alcoholism and this disease is trust, because telling lies, being dishonest, is one of the symptoms of this disease. Most of the time he will tell you, no, I didn't drink anything this evening. No. Or only had one beer when he's stoned drunk. And he'll tell you, I just had one beer, or 2 beers, and he would lie about a whole lot of things. And now with cell phone, you'll call him and he'll tell you, look, I really have to stay on the job, I have some extra work to do that time. He's in a bar, and he's telling his friends to keep quiet. And so telling lies become part of one of the symptoms of the illness, but on the other hand, it creates a big problem of trust. So that, in counseling my patients, I have to help them to understand, alcoholics who are in recovery, you need to understand that, look, you created this problem because of your drinking. And now you have to help to fix it. And trust is not something that will happen overnight. It is something that you have to regain, so that in recovery, this might sound funny, but I know a lot of wives, they're happy that he stopped drinking. He's going to AA meetings now. And when he comes to the door, she go and kiss him on the cheek. And then he realized, she didn't really come to kiss him on the cheek. She came to smell his mouth. Just if he was out there drinking and he would react to that and say, oh, gosh, man, you don't trust me anymore. You know, not realizing what this wife and this family has been through while he was drinking. Because if he's supposed to reach home at 6 o'clock, and when 6 o'clock he's not home, 1 minute past six, what starts to happen in the wife's mind? Oh God, I wonder if he gone back today. You understand? And by 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, she would be all wound up, like in Trinidad we call it a mapipi, and waiting for him. You understand? Because that is her whole behavior. That's how she would behave in the past. And then he comes with some excuse that the car broke down and all of that, and she will not trust him, you know, although it may, and he could get frustrated because there's a whole lot of issues that happens now in recovery. And this is why it is important for the wives or the husbands of the alcoholic. Alcoholics Anonymous has a big book, and there's a whole chapter dedicated to the wives of alcoholics. And there's another chapter following that speaks about the issues of the family afterwards. And anyone listening to this program who's living with an alcoholic, you would be well advised to get a copy of this book, Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know if you could see it here. Yeah. And and read those two chapters. Even if your alcoholic is still drinking, especially if he's now in recovery, it will help you to understand, even though he's in recovery, there will still be a lot of issues. Although he put down the glass, those of us like myself who are working in this field will tell you that there were a lot of reasons that caused him to drink in the first place. His low self-esteem, his poor coping skills, his um, egotism, his desire to be in control all the time, his aggressive attitude, his dishonesty as well, and his inability to control his anger. All of these things caused him to start using alcohol in the first place. And now that he has stopped drinking, he's still going to have to deal with those things without escaping by taking a drink. And if he doesn't learn how to deal with it, and this is why the alcoholic in recovery, it is important for him to go to AA meetings, to learn new ways to cope with these problems rather than have to take a drink. But also for the wives to understand how his drinking has affected them, that they are also behaving in a pathological way. So when a wife go to an Al-Anon meeting, they're not really going to sober up the alcoholic. He's going to the AA meeting, or even if he's not going to an AA meeting or he's still drinking, the wives of alcoholics and the brothers, sisters, mothers, anyone who is living with an alcoholic, it would be useful for them to go to an Al-Anon meeting so they could understand the nature of the disease they are dealing with and how it has affected them so that they can change their ways of coping with it. So that, again, sometimes without realizing it, wives could sabotage the husband's sobriety without realizing it. Because look, when he was drinking, you could still go and steal some money from the pocket. Now that he's sober, his hand get tight as the bark of a tree. Now he counting penny and cent, and he's seeing everything that is wrong. You understand? And then there's also the element in sometimes the marriage breaks down to that point where there's infidelity on both sides. Sometimes the wife might have stepped out of the relationship because it is not, I mean, easy to live with an alcoholic who is drinking and smoking and not bathing and coming home and want to be romantic and being abusive and all of that. It's not easy to relate to that person intimately. And wives step out. But more often than not, the husband, because of his drinking, end up in places where he steps out of the relationship and there's incidents of infidelity, and generally I have found that wives may still reconsider staying in the relationship if the husband was caught to be unfaithful. And he had, of course, he has the excuse because he was drunk and he was drinking, and she loves him, and now I have a set of children with him, and I don't have no other source of income. And because of all of those, they would still stay in the relationship and hope that he would change. But when the wife steps out, Jason, the truth is, I remember vividly a saying my grandmother used to say that a man could take a fork, a pickaxe, a whatever, and try to throw down a house. And he will take a long time, if ever, to be able to do it. He says, but a woman, she would say, a woman could take her small fingernail and throw it down for you in no time. Meaning that women really keep the house together. And I have seen that happen so many times because the woman could continue to take care of the children so he could go for treatment and come back, or he could go to his meetings. It is very difficult for women who start drinking, you know, to access treatment. And that's another topic that we could speak about. You understand? The barriers to treatment. I think I did a program on that where women are concerned in the past. But when the woman steps out of the relationship and is now unfaithful, it is very, very difficult. Men's ego can't handle that. You understand? And it leads sometimes to separation. And as a counselor myself, marriage counseling is what I do as well. Family therapy is one of the things I have been doing for many, many years. Sometimes, unfortunately, one has to counsel a couple where separation is indicated because it may be more useful for they to live apart than to live together. There might be issues that are not able to be resolved. And then there are some alcoholics who have gone to a point where they have not, they are unable to develop sufficient insight as to be able to stop drinking. And as a result, the wife has no other choice but to leave and for her sake and the children. You understand? But those are in the minority where, because I've seen alcoholics and drug addicts who have even become mentally ill because of their substance abuse and drug use and so on. And if they go to Alcoholics Anonymous, they stop drinking, they have been able to pull themselves back and pull their family back together. And many of them, because the truth is, most alcoholics and drug addicts are not going to do anything about their drinking or drug use unless they have hit bottom. They have reached to this, most of the time, to chronic stage. By then, the family has suffered so much that I know that they are willing to give up, or they are, they are their wits' end. So I want to say to all our listeners out there that there is hope. In fact, the worse an alcoholic gets, the more ready he is to do something about it. Because those who are in the beginning stages of the alcoholism still manage to limp along and so on with their work and all of that, are not going to be quite willing. Although if they stop, they could save themselves of 10 or 15 years of literal hell and misery for themselves and the children. Like any other disease, if you catch it early, you save yourself. But even if a person has reached to even vagrancy, I have worked with people who were homeless people when I was director at the Paro Empowerment Center, and I've seen so many of them come back to useful living, back together with their family, having good jobs, and be respectable today. So I want to say, this is not an exhaustive discussion about the issues that wife face, but I want to let them know that there is hope, but sometimes this is the only disease, Jason, where kindness could literally kill the patient. So I'm speaking to the mothers out there and the parents of alcoholics, the wives. Sometimes with this disease, you may have to be cruel to be kind. It is called tough love, and we spoke about that in a previous program. I want to say to all our listeners, you can go back. There are several programs in a series that I've been putting together with the help of Jason and the crew at Jagriti, and posting them on YouTube and Facebook. So please avail yourself of the information when you have time. You can go through these programs. And of course, if you have questions, I could be reached at 671-3040, 671-3040, and I'd be happy to respond to your questions and your queries. So I want to thank you, Jason, and thank the team for sourcing the videos preceding the program on the subject of alcoholism and drug addiction. Very useful. And until next Thursday.
Yes, of course. Always a pleasure to have you with us. And of course, this is where we close the curtain down on this episode of Addiction and Recovery. Join us next Thursday, same time, same station. Until then, stay tuned.